Ryan, you do look funny.
I know, I can't stand it. I'm just gonna have to
When
suffer.
when you're looking right on because you can't see your eyes.
I
It's
know, I look like the Terminator or something.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to just wing it.
Oh, don't let me stop you. Wear
Oh
them.
no, it's
They
too
help.
late. I need one of those like ring lights on me or something so that it's all bright and it doesn't reflect too much. Next time, I'll step up. What's one headache on a Wednesday night? It's you get used to it. So Tom, I don't know if you can hear us, but I did want to let you know that we are live and recording. That we went live. We're waiting for you too. I was just scared you were going to sit down and yell about the computer or something.
You guys can hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay.
It's coming in perfectly evenly now too. There isn't as like a delay or a pause or anything. You must be closer to the router down there.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I feel confident that we're good to begin. So good evening, everyone. We are now calling the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. It's approximately 6:03 p.m. The meeting is not being aired live by AOTV tonight because they are showing their annual auction, which is very exciting. So those that are watching right this second won't know that they could watch the auction, but the auction is on multiple nights this year. Very exciting. I had the chance to film it with the chair for the select board in the town of Athol. I believe Gabe had a chance to film it with the town manager of Athol. And it's just such an exciting thing. And it raises so much money for them. And without this fundraising, they aren't able to provide us the amazing services they have. The adaptation that they've had to have in order to help provide meetings and public hearings throughout the COVID crisis has cost money. And that's on top of their usual operation costs. So please support the auction this year. Watch it when you're not watching the selectmen meeting, and please bid on items. We are airing quote unquote live via Zoom. So those that are watching know that you had to follow the link in order to get here. If you have any friends or family that typically like to watch and you know they only watch via AOTV, feel free to guide them to the Zoom link so that they can also participate in the meeting. Our community development director is recording the meeting tonight, and he will be uploading it to a page so that everyone can see it at the end of the meeting. Takes a little bit of time afterwards, but he assured me that he's going to get right on it. So we'll be able to share it with those that want to watch it. And I know AOTV will also play it at a later time. So that's my spiel on that. The very first item of business we have tonight is that we have a public hearing for the tax rate classification. Now, I'm not sure if we have our... I don't know. I don't see any of them in the audience yet.
Don't see Kelly.
Oh, Kelly.
Yes, start last name.
Oh, she's in the attendees, not panelists. My apology.
Okay.
So we can permit Kelly into the meeting.
Yep.
And Harold Scheid in the meeting.
Yep.
Do you know if Randy's joining or if she's just here watching?
Randy's just watching.
Okay. Smooth, Randy. So, wow, look at Kelly's backdrop. That's way better than mine. I feel like I really dropped the ball tonight. Well, welcome. You both should have the opportunity to unmute yourselves if you wish to speak. And I mean, for at least one of you, it's necessary because you will be holding and running the hearing. So, Harold, how are you?
Great. Good seeing you all. I was kind of sitting in the audience, not seeing myself or Kelly, but I now realize that you're in total control, and
Yes.
I'm here when you want.
Well, not I am. Alec, our community development director, as he keeps me in check that way.
Yeah. So tonight's the big night, our annual tax classification hearing. Some of you have been through that process in the past. It's I'll be presenting, and Kelly will give me a hand if I have a question or two, but I guess I'll wait for you to officially open the hearing then.
So I officially open the tax rate classification hearing at 6:07 p.m.
Do you all have the document that I had circulated?
I know I do. We should all have it. It would have been sent out in the documents that Leanna sent to us yesterday.
Alternatively, I do have the document up, and given the ability to share that, I could walk you through that.
I think that would actually be really helpful. So Alec, if you could easily, if you can get Harold permission to share his screen with us, that would be fantastic. I think it would help the citizens as well see what we're looking at.
You should be able to share it now.
All right, here we go. Fairly simple document that I'll walk through briefly. You'll see on the cover page a listing of all of the board members, or 2 board members, Cynthia and Lisa. I serving the town of Orange as a regional tax assessor, regional meaning that I work in a number of communities. And I'm joined tonight by Kelly, our associate regional assessor assigned to Orange. She's the regular presence at Town Hall and engages with Town Hall staff and the public. And of course, Randy. I don't know if Randy's joining us tonight, but she's our wonderful administrative clerk, and just really glad to have her on board. So we're at the tail end of a very long process that actually begins the first of the year with the folks that prepared the budget, and eventually that budget is presented at town meeting. And of course, that budget in its preparation assumed revenues coming from a number of sources, including local receipts, state aid, even allocations made from free cash. But by far the largest portion of the budget is funded through the property tax. And so our charge as assessors entails a number of steps throughout the year, including inspecting all of the new homes and structures that have been constructed, and all of the administrative work, record keeping, maintaining of an assessor's database. But then long about September, I launch in on a what we call an interim year revaluation. We're mandated by law and DOR mandates to annually visit our standing assessed values and test those values against market sales, that is property sales that have transpired, and where we see our assessments falling below the market as evidenced by those sales, we're required to make adjustments to those values. And in an appreciating market like we've been realizing, that means increasing valuations. So that revaluation effort is followed by the submitting of a number of forms to the Department of Revenue. They review all of our assessments and the basis for those assessments and give us a stamp of approval, hopefully, and they have. And with that, then we are good to go for holding this classification hearing. As the top portion of the form indicates, this exercise, what we call the tax classification hearing, is all about making a decision, a single decision, to either levy a single tax rate across all property types and classes, or alternatively splitting the rate, shifting the burden onto commercial and industrial property owners to yield a reduction on the residential taxpayer, or on the residential tax rate. Any questions at this point? Second page of the handout provides you with definitions of terms that we use in the tax rate setting process. But I want to take you down to this little grid here because this shows the calculations that we make in determining the maximum number of dollars that were permitted under Proposition 2.5 to raise. You'll see we start with last year's levy limit. We add to that what Proposition 2.5 allows, namely 2.5% of last year's levy can be added to our new levy. We have new growth revenue, that would be new tax revenues coming from new construction, new personal property, that is business assets. But principally this year, we have several solar projects that are coming online, and the tax revenues anticipated coming off of those projects constitute really the lion's share of our new growth revenue figure. We have excluded debt, that's money that has to be raised to pay for bonds. You add all those four numbers up and you get to the $12,240,000 figure, which is the levy limit, or what we also call the maximum allowable levy. We can't raise any more than $12,240,440. The levy ceiling is a calculation we just throw in there. Under Proposition 2.5, there is an ultimate cap to what a town can raise. In this case, in Orange, it's $15,257,000. You can see that we're roughly $3 million away from reaching that final cap. Once we hit that cap, we are barred under Proposition 2.5 from ever again raising the property tax levy. That maximum levy, though, is a function of assessed values. And so if values increase in an improving market, we take 2.5% of the value of the town, and that sets our levy ceiling. And then finally, you'll see what we're looking to actually raise this year, $12,236,728, just under the maximum allowable levy, leaving $3,712 of excess. Actually, it's not truly excess, because what we'll see in a minute when we look at our tax rate, if we were to increase the tax rate 1 penny and play that against the total taxable valuation of the town, it would cause us to exceed that maximum levy. So because of rounding, we can never rounding of tax rates, we can never totally absorb every dollar that the maximum allowable levy gives us. I'll pause for a second. Yes, Jane.
So please, again, go over the difference between the levy limit and the levy ceiling, because the description that I heard was like they're both the same thing, but they're not.
Yeah, so if you go further up, there's actually a definition of the levy ceiling up here. The levy ceiling is 2.5% of the full value of the town.
Right.
That full value established by us, the assessors. So the total value for the town, that is the total of all valuations, is $610 million. If you take 2.5% of that, that gives us the levy ceiling.
Right. So then the levy limit is the maximum allowable levy. And so you have two maximums here, and I just want to be clear about the difference.
Yes. So under Proposition 2.5, there are two maximums that are referenced. One is the ultimate maximum. If if we were to raise taxes year after year after year, um, and find ourselves in a position where our actual levy, what we raise, hits that levy ceiling, that's the end of the road for us. We can't we can't exceed that levy ceiling.
But wait, but that would only be until you do another reval, in which case the $610 million number would go up again.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm with you.
So we hope for an appreciating market.
Yeah. So wait, so you're not done yet. So the levy, so then there's the levy, that's the levy ceiling. Now the levy limit is our limit for this year.
The levy limit is our limit for this year.
Okay.
So we're raising $12,236,728. Of course, we have to raise that through our tax billing process, and this is where we get to discussion about shifting tax burdens, and the question posed of the selectmen tonight is, does the board of the select board want to shift the tax rate away from a single rate? And let me just have you focus on this upper bar here, valuations by class. We see here that residential makes up close to 81% of our taxable base. The other roughly 19% is in commercial, industrial, and personal property. What these numbers imply is that it takes about a 5% increase in commercial taxes to yield a 1% reduction in residential taxes. Now, if we were in a community that had like a big shopping mall and some very large commercial and industrial properties, we might well decide that it's worth shifting the burden, even if the result is a nominal or minimal reduction on the residential tax rate. But where in a town like Orange, many of our businesses are small, locally owned often, not always, but often, the question you have to answer is whether that would be prudent. In the past, the Board of Selectmen have adopted a single tax rate, wanting to preserve some equity in tax treatment. I show here in the block below last year's tax rate, and you'll see it was $20.33. Even with the increase in levy over last year, we're looking at a reduced tax rate. But of course, that reduced tax rate is applied to higher valuations. So let's talk a little bit about where valuations are traveling. We are in the midst of, even in this COVID year, a very strong and robust real estate market. We're finding high demand and short supply of properties in all the classes, but especially residential. What we're seeing across much of central Massachusetts is folks that are looking to escape the city, and I'm talking not only Boston and the surrounding communities, but actually even New York. Folks are coming up from New York and parts of Connecticut. I guess fleeing the virus might be one explanation, but we are realizing in Orange a marked appreciation in property values. So we're looking at some modest but increases in residential assessments, probably in the range of about 4 to 5%. So those higher valuations against a lower tax rate will still ultimately lead to a tax increase. You'll see in the block here what we're projecting for a residential single family homeowner owning an average valued home. The increase for the year is an estimated $79, or about 2.2%. So I'll pause again. Any questions? Yes, Pat.
A few minutes ago, I thought I heard you say that the average increase was going to be 5%.
In the assessed valuation. So valuations are, now I'm talking across the board, across all classes of property. Of course, averages always get you in trouble because they're made up of highs and lows and everything in between. But valuations are going up around 4 to 5% on average. The tax rate's going down. The combination of those two will yield what I think is a fairly modest increase of about $79 on that average bill.
Mhm. Okay.
Harold,
Yes.
one of the things that I find people are always confused about, or often confused about, some people always confused about, is the difference between the tax rate and their property taxes. And I see that you have here a number that I'm always fond of referring to, which is like the average tax, the average single family tax bill. And that sort of gets overlooked by people who say, but we have the highest, some of the highest taxes in the state. Not so long ago, our tax rate was bumping up on $25. It's lower now, thank you very much. But I wonder if you could just quickly do the 4 sentences about here's how the tax rate relates to your property tax bill, which to my mind, the actual bill that you pay is what matters more than the multiplier number.
Well, certainly the tax bill that people receive and respond to in writing a check to the town is their main focus. Discussions around tax rates and even assessed values sometimes are lost on many taxpayers. The fact of the matter is, if we look at Orange's average tax bill and compare it to many communities in Central Mass, it is, the average tax is one of the lowest in the area. I don't have an average for the surrounding communities, but last I checked it, the average tax bill in your region is approaching $5,000 per year.
And the tax rate is the multiplier that you use to get to the amount you pay.
Exactly.
Only the multiplier.
Yes. So I don't tend to get terribly fixated on tax rates because absent consideration of the bottom line tax, it doesn't tell you a whole lot. I may have to turn over the discussion, the presentation to Kelly. I have another classification hearing that got scheduled on me at 6:30. But the proposed motion has been laid out for you. I would suggest that if there were ever a desire to shift to the tax burden, in other words, implement a two-tier tax rate structure, that we have a long discussion in open forum to the public well before the classification hearing. The Board of Assessors would recommend that you adopt the tax factors, shift factors as presented here, yielding a single tax rate. And again, that tax rate is estimated to be $20.05.
Well, thank you, Harold. I appreciate that. So
If you don't mind, I'm going to let Kelly respond to any other questions. I'm getting texted from the folks down in Lakeville.
well, thank you, Harold. You have a good night. Enjoy your next hearing.
Okay, thank you so much. Good seeing you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so Kelly should be able to unmute herself now. Does the board have any questions for Kelly? Okay, I'm just trying to, I don't know, when he left the meeting.
Oh, it's a great question.
Okay, Pat, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to be the one to throw this out there. I understand we don't want to discourage business from coming in because of our tax rate, but we are one of the towns that enjoys having a big Walmart here. And I'm wondering how equitable their tax burden is compared to what it might be if we had a commercial tax rate. And in other words, are we missing an opportunity with an enormous corporation that could well afford to pay some higher taxes and take the burden off homeowners who are struggling to meet their tax responsibilities? So we have Walmart, and I'm not really sure what the situation is with Hannaford straddling that town line. Do we tax Hannaford or does Athol?
Can you hear me okay? I have my earbuds in, sorry. Okay. We do tax Hannafords, and I understand your question in regard to Walmart. Valid question. However, what you really want to do is look at the bigger picture of it. And I'm going to say this way for just the lack of really the better, because if we penalize and put that burden on Walmart as a single, if you will, shift that rate to a commercial, shift the rates, what you're really actually going to be doing is you're going to be hurting your other commercial businesses within town. So even though we're focusing on one big company, they're not the only ones that's going to be receiving that burden. You're talking all your downtown local business owners that are considered commercial, as well as your industrial. The biggest thing, my dog is underneath me. I am so sorry. So if I'm shaking, it's him. Sorry. And the biggest thing to take into consideration is you have a lot of chapter land within your community. And I don't know if you're a right to farm community, but you do have a lot of chapter. And when you have chapter, all those chapter properties that are receiving a discount, all those farmers, they in turn will be getting the commercial rate and no longer getting the discount as well, because they are considered commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of avoids that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be really careful when you think of one big entity. Is it really enough to put that burden on all the smaller businesses for that one entity? Had you had something like Whitney Field Mall up here, or Solomon Pond Mall up in this area, or even the Market Basket that's down there, if you had something more of like that here, then maybe it's something more to look into.
Mhm.
We would not recommend the select board to do a split rate at all. You know, especially if you're looking for businesses to come into town.
Right, right.
Usually,
So when the valuations were looked at last year, where a lot of people saw some significant increases, and I don't know how that happened in 1 year, if it's supposed to be looked at every year. But did the valuation on places like Walmart get increased proportionately?
we have to increase proportionately across the board. So everything was,
Because looking at the
Proportionately
chart,
completed.
it seemed like kind of a late number for our commercial valuation.
Harold would have to answer that. He really actually concentrates on the commercial and industrial on the number portion. However, everything was proportionately done and submitted to the state for them to approve, and they have done
I
that.
think it bears looking
So-
at.
So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Kelly? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I'm just looking, I don't see any other hands raised in the audience. I have answered a couple of questions through the question and answer box here. Jane, did you have a question or comment?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion when we're
All
done.
right, I think we should be good to make the motion then.
Okay, then I would like to move that the Board of Selectmen accept the recommendation of the assessors and establish a single tax rate for the town of Orange to be approximately $20.05.
Seconded.
So motion has been made and second. Is that did you make that motion or did you read it out of the paper?
I made it up based on what I see in the paper. The word in there.
I'm reading the motion. I think we have to include this
Oh, you
little
want you want the whole actual thing? Okay.
yeah, do you mind? For some reason I think we're required to.
No, I don't mind. But I gotta get it.
I could also read it.
Orange Board of okay, I make a motion that the Orange Board of Selectmen vote in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56 as amended, the percentage of local tax levy which will be borne by each class of real and personal property relative to setting the fiscal year 2021 tax rates, and set the residential factor at 1.0 with a corresponding CIP shift of 1.0 pending approval of the town's annual tax recap by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. And that will result in a single tax rate of approximately $20.05.
Seconded.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwann's aye.
Pat Lucier, aye.
Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayu, aye. That motion carries. Kelly, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Please pass the same along to your colleagues and Harold, and enjoy your night with your dog.
thank you. Thanks. Have a good night.
Absolutely. So we will now close the tax rate hearing at approximately 6:36 p.m. That brings us to our working session, which are the personnel policies, section 5.1, 5.8. Alec, if you could permit Trish Barnes to the meeting, please, that would be appreciated. I'm just looking to see if she's out there.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Trish. How are you?
Hi, Trish.
I'm good.
Good, good. Okay, so we're going to follow the same protocol that we have been following, as I feel that's been successful. So the first personnel policy is 5.1, bereavement leave. Has everyone had a chance to review the policy?
Yes.
Okay, so I would enter any questions or comments on the policy. Jane.
Aunts and uncles, they're not in here.
That's fair.
This is the list that had currently been in the bylaws, so I
Yeah.
just took it from there.
Yeah, I believe you. I'm just,
If
Maybe.
you want to add aunt and uncle, we can do that.
well, yeah, my aunts and uncles are important to me, and I think if I lost one, I would want some bereavement leave.
Do you think, just playing devil's advocate, do you think that we should do, So personally, I don't know if you want my honest opinion. I think that those listed here, I actually think should be 5 days. And I think we should expand the list for aunts, uncles, and cousins to represent 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
Am I,
Okay,
to be fair, if I lost one of my parents, I don't think that I'd be at work within 3 days. I truly don't. I think that I would need at least a week off. I think my mom's watching. No offense, I love you dearly, and a week wouldn't be enough. But I do know that I would have to return to work and relive a sense of normalcy. And I just think 3 days wouldn't do it, in my opinion. But that's just mine.
okay. Happy to revise
Who are
if
we,
everyone agrees.
who are we putting under the 5 days?
I think the list as it stands currently, I think would be good for the 5-day list. And then I think the 3 days could be the additional aunts, uncles, and cousins, like first cousins, I guess. It can get tricky like that, I understand. But they're really no different than an aunt or an uncle, essentially.
I'll support that. And I apologize to my cousins for overlooking them.
Okay, so that would be the revision as stands. Any other questions or comments on the bereavement leave?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the bereavement leave policy as amended.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwann's aye.
Pat Lucier, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayu, aye. That motion carries. 5.2 is holiday. Questions and comments on the holidays?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to accept section 5.2 holidays as presented.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Can I make one comment?
Yeah, of course.
Something that you might think of, the day after Thanksgiving is listed as a holiday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the town hall isn't open on Friday and some of the other administrative offices. You could make that a floating holiday.
Oh, that's a good idea.
A floating holiday.
So take out day after Thanksgiving and put in one floating holiday.
Correct.
I
Did
think
we-
that's a great idea because we always struggle. And in the COVID year we've had this year, we have had to alternate some of the things we do, some of the practices we do, and a floating holiday would definitely be a little more fair.
I think that's a great idea.
Could we leave it in there so it says day after Thanksgiving, then put in parentheses floating holiday? So that way it seems like, I don't know, it would be clear to the next board why we decided to put in a random floating holiday. I mean, if floating holiday is clear, I guess. Do we have any departments that are open on Fridays? So like
Yeah,
some that works like highway and stuff like that, right?
Highway,
Right.
water,
I feel like
police,
it should be
fire.
More of a, I don't know. Because I would want them, if they were open, well, they could choose to use the floating holiday that day if they wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, I guess floating holiday's fine. Sorry, I just had to talk myself through that one apparently.
So I will amend my motion to say that we accept section 5.2 holidays as amended to note the day after Thanksgiving as a floater.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwann's aye.
Pat Lucier, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayu, aye. That motion carries. 5.3, insurance plans. Questions and comments on the insurance plans policy? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept section 5.3 insurance plans as presented.
Seconded.
motion been made and seconded. Further discussion?
I want to commend Trish for getting through this because insurance makes my eyes glaze over.
Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwan's eye.
Pat Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayhew, aye. That motion carries. 5.4 longevity bonus.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept section 5.4 longevity bonus as presented.
Seconded.
Motion been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwan's eye.
Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayhew, aye. That motion carries. 5.5 personal paid time off.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept section 5.5 personal paid time off as presented.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? Gabe?
I have a discussion. We are in executive session tonight going to talk about the unions and all their agreements. And I recommend that we change the personal paid off days to 4 rather than 3 to make things fair across the board.
If that's what's been negotiated, then I could see, I've always been a big proponent of trying to keep what we agree upon with our unions the same as the employees that don't benefit from that. So I support that as long as this practice stands. I personally would really like the board to review the concept of a PTO policy or a paid time off policy where we don't have vacation, personal, and sick days. We simply have an accrual process of time off that employees then can use however they want. If they want to take a day off for sick, for family, for vacation, there's no need for us to try to differentiate that. They simply have a bank of time off. But tonight's, I don't think, the ideal night for that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But going forward, I think that would be a better practice for us. But to keep things fair, I can support 4 personal days for now.
So I'll change my motion to accept section 5.5. Well, I'm assuming that we're in agreement on that. I guess we should discuss the motion first some more.
Is there any further discussion on it being 4 days instead of 3? Seeing none?
So I will rescind my previous motion and make a motion that we accept section 5.5 personal paid time off as presented with the amendment to reflect 4 personal days, paid personal days rather than 3.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwan's eye.
Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayhew, aye. That motion carries. 5.6 retirement plan.
Chairman, I move that we accept section 5.6 retirement plan as presented.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? There's no motion. Has it been? Yeah, there's been a motion. All those in favor?
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwan's eye.
Pat Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayhew, aye. That motion carries. 5.7 paid sick leave. Questions on paid sick leave?
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept section 5.7 paid sick leave as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwan's eye.
Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayhew, aye. That motion carries. 5.8 is paid vacation.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept section 5.8 paid vacation as presented.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? Out of curiosity, I don't know. I think Trish would be the one that tracks this. are all of the employees that you're aware of, are they on track to not lose a substantial amount of vacation time this year? Or from your experience, would you say that COVID had a real negative impact on employees' ability to use vacation time?
Go ahead, Gabe.
Gabe, please.
So it was a huge impact when COVID pandemic hit in March. We had a lot of people taking vacation in May and June.
Mhm.
So I made the decision to allow them to carry over this year only.
Okay.
And on the stipulation that they would not be allowed to carry over this year. In other words, you don't want to build the vacation. You don't want them to carry over 2 weeks, get 3 or 4, and then have a 6-week liability. And then if you allowed carryover again, you would have a huge liability with vacations carrying over. So this year I allowed them, and the unions were very happy with that. It was the unions that were quite concerned. And so we did do that, and it did impact a lot of people because they couldn't go anywhere.
Right. That's what I was asking. I wanted to make sure that we did something like that. I know there was
Right.
ton
We
of-
did. And I think they have plenty this year, and a lot of people have been using more intermittently, like, 4 days here and 3 days there to try to use some of it up. Because we can't have everybody out in May and June
Right.
towards the end of the year. So we did try to do
Our
something.
departments do a really good job of working one another and
Yeah.
ensuring that they have time off without really crippling the department, considering how short-staffed they are. Is that correct?
Yeah. And in case of an emergency, we do allow the department heads to approve a carryover. So if there's something happening that they can't allow somebody to leave, they've always on an individual basis been able to come to the select board. Basically, it's been myself, the TA, and ask if they can carry over those days for just cause.
Right.
We've had it happen a couple of times, but not as a general policy.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. Further discussion on the 5.8 paid vacation? Okay. All those in favor, roll call vote.
And Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwann's aye.
Here, I,
Tom Smith, aye.
Brian Mayu, aye. That motion carries. So that brings us to next meetings being the last section, which is section 6. I feel confident that we could get through the entire section. Is everyone
I
comfortable?
think it's a little heavy, there's a lot more language in this last section that you might want to break it into 2.
All right, let's look at it here.
Let's do 1 through 5.
And then we were considering adding a couple.
Yeah, those are pretty serious. Huh? Yeah, I think through 5 actually makes more sense. I agree. Okay, so 6.1 through 6.5 for the next meeting, please, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, Trish.
Gosh, feels good to get this done.
Yeah, I can see the finish line in sight.
Yeah.
I'm sure that feels good too.
It does.
All right, thank
Good
you.
night,
very much.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Okay, so before our public hearing started, we typically have open time for the public at the beginning of the meeting, but in an attempt to make sure that we are on time for that, I did not do that. So I'm just gonna have a quick moment of open time for the public here, giving the citizens an opportunity to speak prior to the, I guess, essential start of general business. And then we do have another open time for the public after our general business section. So if you have something, we have had a couple questions in the Q&A box. I do my best to answer them in the meeting if possible. If not, we try to get back to you ahead of time. And if you wish to speak verbally, you're welcome to raise your hand. So as of right now, I have Mike McGee raising his hand. So Alec, if you could permit Mike McGee to speak, please. So Mike, you're being permitted, so you should be able to unmute yourself in a second, and that will give you a chance to speak.
Am I unmuted?
You are, so you are
Good.
welcome to the meeting.
You
and the
can be at
floor.
any time if you want to, but I'm very concerned that you're scheduling a special town meeting in the middle of this pandemic. I see January 7th is a special town meeting in person at the town hall. What's going on?
We have need for business to get done, and we feel confident with communication and efforts from the Board of Health and our health director that we can accomplish it safely.
You think you can have 75 people or more, right? 75 is the quorum.
Correct.
Okay, good luck.
I appreciate the support.
When is the warrant going to be drawn up?
I don't know the official date. Nancy could answer that question, so we'll be sure to get that answer to you.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so now if we could permit, I think it's I can't pronounce the last name. I don't believe so. Elmer Simov, possibly. Alec, if you could give this person permission to speak. So Elmer, you should be able to hear us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I am only on through audio, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving me to speak. I will try to summarize my point very quickly. I'm urging you to adopt or give the option to people who want to pay their taxes or their water to pay them through e-bills and auto pay. The important thing is that it's not going to change the way people currently pay it. If people want to continue to pay it through mail, that will remain. You're just simply giving an option for people like me, and I'm sure others in the future, who prefer to pay e-bills and auto pay. Advantages, I sent an email a month ago. Advantages are many, less interaction, less going to the post office, COVID-19 interactions, mailing things, getting things from the post office. Auto pay pays reliably on time the bills. Everybody else has done it already. 100% of businesses, I assume, and half of the towns, I guess. The mail office sometimes can lose things, sometimes can delay things. So e-bills will improve the speed, will improve the accuracy, and create better reliability, less work for your employees because they will have to do less mailing and opening and filing and storing of physical letters and stuff. And of course, you will contribute less to global warming because you will be cutting less trees. There will be less postal trucks on the roads and so on. So National Grid, Verizon, they're doing it in a very efficient way. Again, it's just an option. If somebody wants to continue paying to get their Verizon bill in the mail, they still can. But when I get my bill in the mail, I go to my bank and I enter the Verizon address. And I'm sure some of you are doing it already. Some of you are already paying e-bills, I assume. And so once you enter it in the bank, it gives you the option to pay e-bills and auto pay. So I'm curious as to what are the reasons. It seems to me it's a no-brainer. Eventually, the town will save money. It seems to me. So what are the reasons that you're reluctant to implement e-bill and auto pay?
Okay, Elmer. So I very much appreciate the suggestion, especially through email that you had sent to us earlier on in this previous month that we just had. I know that it is on at your request and the request of one of the select board members having received your email. It is a discussion that we will talk about shortly under general business. I feel confident we'll be able to adequately address what you're asking here. So stay tuned and we'll have a little bit of discussion on that shortly. But I
Okay.
appreciate you taking the time to share with the entire public that's watching tonight, as well as the board in person, if you will, your thoughts on it. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, so not seeing any other hands for open time for the public, I am going to move the agenda forward to general business. So Alec, if you could permit Nancy in, it's going to bring us to our first item of business, which is procedure to make the town clerk position appointed. So Nancy, you should be able to speak.
Okay,
How are you tonight?
I'm doing well.
Good. Okay. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, the agenda topic on tonight's meeting, is to revisit a topic that came up about last month now and has come up numerous times over the past few years, which is that of our town clerk's position is one that is appointed in the town of Orange and in many communities is an elected position. So I am trying to discuss with the board as to what it would look like if we wanted to move forward with changing that position, what the process, what the procedure is, and how we should go about doing that. So Nancy has some facts that she wishes to share with us about what the process would have to look like, and then we can go from there.
Okay, the first step would be that it has to be on a town meeting warrant and approved at a town meeting. There's not a specific wording, but there's this has been tried, or this along with other offices have been discussed and done over the years numerous times. Some of them have taken several times before the public decided that it made sense to make the office appointed. The town clerk has been attempted a couple of times, and at those times there was not an interest in making the town clerk appointed. So it goes to the town meeting first. There's a warrant article on the town meeting asking to make the town clerk's position appointed. And then if it passes there, then it has to go to a ballot vote at the annual town election. It can't be a special town election. So if we were having a debt exclusion election, an override election, a special election to fill a seat of some sort, it cannot be on one of those elections. It has to be on the annual town election.
Okay, and to be clear, the annual town election, so the special town meeting is where the community would vote in favor of changing it, and the special election is when they go to the polls to vote on it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure I'm following the process here. And that election can't be had at any time. Kind of like how we moved the selectmen one once. We can't, this one would have to happen in July, basically.
It has to happen at the annual town election. So if it was going to happen this year, it would be on the May 17th date.
Oh, that's right. We moved that. Okay. Okay. After that, is that it? Would that be the last step in the process?
If both of those things pass, then the position would become appointed upon the end of my current term, which would be March of 2023. So I would hold it as elected until that point. And then in March of 2023, I would either have to decide whether I'm retiring at that point or whether I decide to stay on. And if I decided I wanted to stay on, then I would have to be appointed by the board. If I decided I wanted to retire, the board would I would obviously have to notify you guys before March of 2023, what my intentions are. But at that point, you would need to, if I was not going to stay on, you would need to advertise and begin the interview process and so forth to hire somebody.
Okay. In the current term for the clerk once elected, is it 5 years?
3 years.
It's 3 years.
3 years.
So when 2023, when is your term up currently?
2020, I was on the ballot.
Wow, okay. Wow. Guys, time is really flying by here. Okay. So 2023, that's your plan. So, okay. So that would be it for legal process, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm sure that took some research. So thank you for taking the time to do that research. So I would love to open it up to Nancy to kind of share, since you're the person in the position and you've been in the position for quite a while, I'm just really curious as to what your thoughts are on whether you feel the position should be appointed or elected, coming from someone that's experienced it and who also knows that she, you know, her time in that career is coming to an end by choice after a long run of it.
I have mixed emotions on the subject. There are benefits to keeping it elected. There are benefits to moving it to appointed. Because I have to run the election, at which time if it passed at the town meeting at the election, I have to run that election. I have to remain impartial. So I will not say I'm for it or against it. Because I can't. Having to run the election, I have to remain impartial, like I said. There are benefits both ways. If it remains elected, somebody from town has to run for the office and be elected. And at that point, they're not going to have any experience. They're not going to have any knowledge. When I started, I was lucky. I grew up in a home where my mother was the town clerk, so I knew some of the stuff. I won't say a lot of the stuff. I knew some of the stuff from having grown up with it. It was a small town, so she had the office in the house. So people were coming in and out, getting their fishing licenses, marriage licenses, dog licenses, you know, a lot of the different things. Then when Shirley Page decided she was ready to retire, she contacted me and asked if I would be interested in taking over as the town clerk. I ended up deciding I would try it. She had the board, she appointed me as her assistant. So I worked with her for 4 or 5 months on a part-time basis, learning where things were, how to do certain, you know, different things, what's got to be done at what times and so forth. After I took over, within a couple of years of having taken over, Shirley was covering for me when I would go on to conferences, or if I got to take a chance to take a vacation or whatever. And when I'd come back, she'd say, "Oh my God," she says, "this office has changed and gotten so much busier than it was when I retired." So it changes dramatically, very quickly. This current year, I should say, has been a crazy year as far as the elections. And even those of us that are seasoned clerks have been pulling our hair out trying to keep up with things. So to have someone with no experience step in without having any training, I would be very concerned for the town and for the future of the town, because if you mess up one little thing, it can cause the town a lot of problems, financial or otherwise.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I respect your both need and desire to remain impartial to it.
If someone was to be appointed, you could get somebody from another, you know, from someplace else, an assistant town clerk that wanted to become a town clerk. Whether you hired somebody, whether the person was appointed or whether it was an elected person, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay for any length of time. So the fact that a lot of people are saying, well, if someone's appointed, they're going to just move on to the next town. That happens with elected clerks. They get their experience, then they move on to another town and become an appointed town clerk. So one doesn't preclude the other one from, you know, that people are going to stay, you know, so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Gabe?
Nancy, I just have a question for you. Are you recommending that we perhaps consider hiring someone maybe on a part-time basis like you were to train them?
Definitely.
How do you see that being helpful?
I truly think that if that was going to happen, somebody would need to be in place by January of 2022. And the reason I say that is they need to have a good year working with somebody, because in 2022, there will be a state primary, a state election, as well as the town election. And each one of those have different intricacies to them, so that they need to have somebody helping guide them through each of these different things. There's tank registrations that have to happen. There's dog licensing that has to happen. There's registration of voters. There's taking out nomination papers, certifying nomination papers, certifying petition papers. There's a lot of things that are similar from one month to the next, but there's enough differences that I think somebody needs to have a good year. If they're actually thinking that they would like to take the position, whether it be an appointed position or an elected position, they really need to have some time to get their feet wet and see what they're getting into and learn where things are, what they have to do, where to look for things.
Okay.
I was fortunate that even after Shirley retired, Doris Bittenbender was our town accountant, and she shared the office with the town clerk. She and the town clerk shared the office space. And Doris, because she had been there for a lot of years and worked with the town clerk, had a lot of knowledge. So when somebody would call and ask for something, I'd say, well, hang on, I'm new, let me see what I can find out. And I'd say something to Doris. I says, do you know anything about this and such? And she'd say, yep, you go in the vault and it's here, or you look there, or this is where you find that information. And so I was able to find that. If you don't give somebody a chance to work with someone that's got the knowledge, you're not being fair to them or to the townspeople.
Okay.
Do
Well,
you,
thank you very much for that. I know Nancy she's obviously in favor of this, and I know that I had actually brought it up. I think I was the last one to bring it up at our last meeting, and I have a couple issues with the way the appointed position works currently and what is common practice amongst municipalities. And I'll try to summarize that really simply. So in the private sector, most organizations and companies have roles that fall under departments. And in your department, you have the department head, and maybe you have an assistant, and then you have those that work underneath them and training manuals in a training department that helps new hires orient to the role and the position. In a municipality, especially those that are smaller and haven't quite reached, the level of a city, so basically, a town, you don't have a lot of departments for many roles. You have the town treasurer, the town accountant, you have the town clerk, the tax collector, for example. So all of these are individual departments where they don't have a department head, they don't have a trainer, they don't have a direct manual, they don't have any way to orient into the role. And that is very, very challenging for anyone. So when you have a hired position, you open up the opportunity to bring in someone that at the bare minimum has experience from another municipality in that same line of work. If we had enough money and the ability, I would have an assistant for every single one of these positions in each role, and they would be able to learn and grow in the role and move up into it. And unfortunately, that's just not the way we operate at this moment. But the town clerk's position right now, I think it's crucial that we have that happen. One of my issues with the way it is designed currently, which does happen in a lot of municipalities, is exactly what Nancy is indicating. A lot of municipalities will create an assistant town clerk position, even though the role for town clerk is elected. So they hire this assistant, they train them, they teach them, and then when the election comes, they get to be put on the ballot. And it's not an election. It's not fair. This person has been given more of an opportunity and a chance and has almost already been selected by the town for the role. And that to me, I think is the opposite of democracy. And that is where I struggle a lot with this. And it's a very common practice in many municipalities, as they've all discovered this void in training and growth opportunity for town clerks when they choose to retire, bringing someone in that doesn't know what they're doing. So I'm really hesitant to bring in an assistant town clerk while the position is still elected, because I almost feel like it's us underhandedly really kind of discrediting the democratic process, which is where my support for making the position appointed begins with. I think that we should take advantage of the opportunities to bring in someone that's talented, experienced, and we know from start to finish will do a great job in the role based on their resume and experience. So, I am greatly in support of pushing forward this process. I'd like to see us hold some type of discussion again at another meeting, not necessarily a formal public hearing, but it should be a topic of discussion on another meeting pulling forward, where we do allow substantial citizen discussion on it, and the board also the opportunity to discuss on it. But I do want to open it up for the rest of the board to share thoughts and feelings now. Tom?
Until you honestly did an excellent job explaining this, and I actually, by the way you explained it, made it a lot more sensible. honestly, for someone being appointed. Because I also feel as though I wish Nancy could just not retire, but when she's ready, we'll miss her. I mean, terribly, honestly. But I also feel as though shouldn't everyone have that opportunity to go for this position? I mean, if you're just doing it as a part-time and then, okay, now you really kind of got the job, even though they have to be elected, by it being more of a democratic process, it opens up to a lot more candidates. That's by you explaining and actually listening to all sides of it, the way Nancy did it was excellent. But same thing, I think we do need to have further discussions and have input, obviously, from the residents of Orange.
Further discussion? So I know, oh, go ahead, please. Jane, sorry.
So I'm in favor of appointed instead of elected, and I have been for a long time, and I've thought about it a lot, and I've talked to Nancy a lot about it. I think it should be obvious to all of us that elections don't always turn up the most qualified person. We don't always end up with the most qualified person in an elected office. And sometimes that doesn't matter because there are other more experienced people around. Like, it's been wonderful to have new people on the Board of Selectmen because some of us have been here already and we can, there's always support and mentoring available. The town clerk, boy, we elect a town clerk and we get who we get, and it's somebody who's from town who thinks they'll try the job, and they might be great or they might not be great. And it just really freaks me out to think that we could get somebody in that position who would not be the incredible, talented professional that Nancy has been for us all along. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much I admire Nancy and the work she has done for us over time. It's so much of it is invisible, but it's been critical so many times for us. And we need to maintain that level of professionalism. And I think it just is risky to think that whoever gets elected would rise to that. They might, or they might not. Now, if we want to talk about appointments and we want to make sure we have somebody from town, we can always prefer people from Orange. We could construct a job solicitation in a way to make sure that we gave people from town the advantage. But I just think the job is way too important to kind of open it up for whomever out there might be looking for a job at the time that we have an election coming in a vacant position, because they're just on their own.
Thank you. Further discussion from the board? Pat?
I've been thinking about this over the last couple of days, and there's the one sticking point that I have that I think has a certain connotation to it that people may get hung up on is the term appointed. I would rather have people see it as the same as you do in business. You have a job description, you take applications, you check credentials, experience, and you hire the most qualified candidate that you can find. It's a hiring. It's not, and I think that's why people recoil from this idea of an appointment, because it's almost like, oh, they're just going to say, well, you're a friend of mine, I'm going to appoint you. That's not what we're talking about. So I really want to stress that factor, that this is trying to find the most qualified person that we can find to hire, not to appoint. And that's what
That's a
I've
really good point.
That's a really good point, Pat. It really is, because legally there's a certain term we're using, but the the underlying meaning to those of us subconsciously is different than that of hearing a hired position. So I'm really glad you stated that. Alex, I know everyone on Facebook knows you have a very strong opinion on this, so I'm surprised you haven't spoken yet. Are you going to?
I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to speak first. I don't support changing the position. I don't think it makes sense. I think it's a unique position. We need to have somebody who understands this community. This is a very unique community. This is not a community for beginners, and I think having somebody come from outside would be a mistake. I had the opportunity to look at the job advertisements for town clerks for the past 2 years at the Massachusetts Municipal Association. Almost all of them advertise our initial salary bigger than what we pay the town administrator at this moment. Most of them significantly. So it would almost require us to increase the salary in almost 50%. That seems to be like the going rate at the moment. And I think we are making the mistake of assuming that we're necessarily going to get a qualified person to the job. Because I could tell you this, a few years ago now, we were looking for a town treasurer paying $50,000. And I remember very well the discussion that we couldn't find anybody qualified for that position for that salary. And that's why we had to merge that office with a TA. I feel very confident that's going to happen with this position. We're going to be outbid by every other municipality out there. Or we're going to end up in the system in which we're sharing a town clerk with 7 other municipalities. And I don't think that's what Orange wants. I don't think that's in Orange's best interest. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that at this moment.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's really important because, as many people know, Alex made the decision to share his opinions that are clearly strongly formed prior to the meeting tonight, all over social media and emails to each of us. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I think I'd be really remiss if I just sat here quietly and pretended that didn't happen. So you actually listed off numerous points that you felt were good reasoning behind it not being appointed and instead remaining elected. And some of them I just couldn't possibly agree with in the slightest. The biggest one being that the town clerk needs to be from our community in order to get that same level of dedication and work ethic and work drive. And I personally, I found it very offensive to many of the employees that we have, our town administrator, our police chief, our highway superintendent, none of which reside in the town of Orange, couldn't be more dedicated to the town and their roles and their teams if they tried. I think we have acquired phenomenal staff over the years, and I'm so grateful for them. And I feel confident we could do the same with the town clerk position being hired rather than that of elected. The same residents who live in Orange who would be eligible for an elected position would be eligible to apply for the job. We wouldn't be excluding anybody. We'd be giving the same people with the expansion of our neighboring communities the opportunity to apply so that we could get the most for the budget that we have. If you were to search the MMA and look at the town administrators that have been posted in the tax collectors over the past 2 years, you will find the same results. These same positions are paid and offered at a much higher rate in many communities than we're able to do so in Orange. And we still have been able to acquire strong candidates who believe in the role and believe in the community. And I know that that same trend would continue in this position as well. Something that I think is really important, which isn't necessarily related specifically to whether we should change this or not, is that I have to acknowledge my extreme disappointment in the divisive technique that you chose to use in order to share your opinion on this.
There was first of all,
no, I'm actually
there was no divisive technique. Okay, let's end there. I have the right as selectman to engage citizens in discussions. There's no Alex. I'm speaking.
You will absolutely not tell me. I am the chair of this meeting, and Alex, can you please mute Alex's mic so that he can listen to me, because he will not tell me when he is speaking. Alex, it's really disappointing that that's how this conversation has to take place. The chair sets the agenda and the chair runs the meeting. That is the position that I've taken on in the role that I have here. The agenda is set the same consistent pattern every time we meet. You receive it and then you're aware of what we're discussing so that you can prepare slightly ahead of time of what to discuss, but you cannot discuss it with the other members of the board ahead of time. It is against the law for me to reach out to each of you and say, I will be putting on the agenda the discussion of changing from appointed to elected to appointed town clerk. What are your thoughts on it? These are my thoughts. Let me know so that you're prepared to talk about it. That's against the law. And I have followed that pattern consistently through my terms as selectman, as I'm on my second term here. I'm aware of the open meeting law and I respect it greatly. You posted numerous comments on social media today, as well as emailed me criticizing and being completely unaware that the agenda would be posted. And you were taken back that I would, quote unquote, rush this decision with no consultation with our citizens. And that's simply not true. It's on the agenda so that citizens can hear us talk about it and can participate in the discussion like every other topic we have. You made numerous comments that were divisive and destructive to our teamwork. The Board of Selectmen fails to manage and supervise their current employee, yet they wish to add other ones. I find that rude, arrogant, and condescending, and it's simply not true. The problem is not putting the idea on the agenda. The problem is that this is already in the works without any discussion from the Board of Selectmen. Again, that's simply not true. We're discussing it here as a board for the first official time. I haven't reached out to any of you on my own and had a discussion on your thoughts on it, as this is the first time I've heard any of your opinions on it. This is how it is handled. I'm sorry that you disagreed with the process. You're welcome to take it up with Mass General Law. You can reach out to the attorney if you feel it's necessary. And you can also file a complaint with the open meeting law, which has been done in the past by numerous selectmen who don't agree with the process. But at the end of the day, the town of Orange has historically followed open meeting law and done a wonderful job doing so. Tonight's topic is no exception to that. You have every opportunity tonight to share your opinion. And of course, as an individual, you have every right to share your thoughts and opinions on social media. I find it disrespectful, distasteful, and quite frankly, not conducive to the team effort that we are here, because we are a board. You are not the mayor, you're not a governor, and you're unhappy with the president who gets to operate. You have to work with each one of us as a team here in front of all of our citizens so that everyone has a right to hear our thoughts and have us have a collaborative effort so we can reach and accomplish the same goal together. In the future, I would respectfully ask that you don't utilize your Alex Schwann's First Selectman page to really disfranchise yourself from us and separate yourself in a way where you're supporting your agenda and your opinions and your beliefs individually, and you work with us as a team. I'm afraid that many citizens in our town could possibly see that page as you stating fact and sharing true official beliefs and official opinions and statements from the town. And I know that's not true based on the couple alone that I've read this evening. I'm respectfully asking that you handle it differently in the future, and I'm happy to continue the dialogue.
Are you done?
I am.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate your effort to go through every comment that I made in conversation with citizens. I think that's, it's quite some time that you spend there, Ryan. I have the right to engage citizens. I have the right to, gather their knowledge and their views and their positions on this. I'm here to represent them. I don't represent, anybody else. I represent the citizens. It is my position that I do everything which I believe is in their best interest. The team, I'm willing to work with the team. I always been, but here's the issue. I do not follow blindly anything. We must work together to bring forward the goals, the ambitions, and the interests of our citizens. And it's not just about I put something in the agenda and that's that, and then we just go from there. I mean, you're talking about the teamwork, but there's no consultation on. I wasn't aware that was going to be on the agenda. You just brought up in your selectmen report in the last meeting. So, I will continue to engage citizens as I see fit, to tell the truth. But
okay, well, thank you for your
I respect your position on that, but
okay, thank you. So further discussion on the topic here. Tom.
I just want to set the record straight on one thing, which I think is important. Our town administrator stepped in to help us as a treasurer. If it was not for her knowledge, we would have been in a lot. She saved us money. She stepped in when we needed something, so please have your correct facts, Alex, when you say that.
I'm not disagreeing. All I'm saying is we couldn't find somebody. If that position, which I believe used to be an elected one, was still an elected one, we would have had an independent town treasurer today, which we don't. So
Further questions from Jane?
I need to revisit a point that you made, Ryan, and then a rebuttal, Alex, that you offered. Of course, you're surprised by things that show up on the agenda. I am too, every time the agenda shows up, because that's the process. We can't confer most of the time about what's going to be on the agenda in 2 weeks because we can't talk about it. Things show up on the agenda when one of us thinks it's important and the chair agrees. That's just the process. That's just the way we have to do it. So yeah, I was surprised to see it there too, but that opens the door for us to talk about it.
So further discussion on the topic. Okay, so go ahead, Jane. I'm sorry.
What's our next step?
So I think what it would make sense, from what I'm hearing overall, the theme is that there's opportunity to discuss this further and give us, now that we have had it, and I recognize that with it being shared on the agenda, for every time anything is asked to be on the agenda, it's such little time is presented for us to think about it. For example, the next topic about the bill pay, this was a request of one of the selectmen having been notified by a citizen. So most of us haven't had a ton of time to ponder it. So same for this. I think it's really important that we discuss it at our next meeting, and that gives us time to invite citizen feedback and invite ourselves to reach out to citizens as individuals. I know it's something that I often do. I reach out to other communities. I have a lot of, I wouldn't call them friends, but really acquaintances in other communities that I've worked with that I know can help me. No offense to those that are watching that heard me say I wouldn't call them friends, but professional acquaintances that I know can offer their guidance as well. So I like to use that time to do so. So I'd like to see this topic on our next agenda. And of course, invite citizens to share their thoughts and opinions on it. And then we could move forward with whether we wanted to place it on our January warrant so that we could have it to be voted at annual town meeting. And that of course gives even more time then for citizens to discuss and for us to talk about it. Okay, so I will be Nancy, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Annual town election, you said annual town meeting.
Oh, I apologize. Annual town election, thank you. So that will be, it will be, and not as a surprise, it will be on the agenda this coming meeting as well.
And Mike McGee had asked when the warrant would be posted. The board will be signing it on the 16th of December. And as soon after that as I can catch up with one of the constables to get it posted, it will be posted.
Great. Thank you very much for answering that. I appreciate it.
It needs to be signed on the 16th.
We will be, regardless of how your position is replaced, it will not be an easy task. Perfect example. Thank you, Nancy. So our next topic for discussion is that of e-bills and auto pay. So this was touched on a little while ago by Elmer. I know that Gabe had a little bit of time to prepare an answer to this, so I'm going to turn it over to Gabe, and I'm just going to actually excuse myself for a brief moment.
Okay. Hi there. This is a very complicated topic. And so there's a lot of buzzwords we're using here: eBay, auto pay. I'll tell you where the town is at the present moment in time. We have recognized the fact that with the COVID pandemic and the fact that we're an open campus, meaning we have a building department in another building, a tax collector in another building, and people have to drive around to get signatures for things. So we have recently received an IT grant for $49,800 to implement an online bill system. And this is a grant we went after. So what that is a beginning of what the Mr. Simov discussed. It will be an easy way for people from their homes to go on and get a building permit, to get a fire permit, and to pay for things. Everything will be done online. The e-billing that he mentioned and the ACHing is a totally different thing. And one of the things I want to talk to people about is I want to tell them, and people know this, that we already have an online paying system. It's called Unipay Gold. You can go on and you can set up payments and you can pay your mortgage payment that way. You put your bill number in and you set it up and you pay through Unipay. So you can easily pay your bills out of your checking account or using your charge card from the comfort of your home. One of the challenges Orange faces is that we have a huge percentage of Orange residents that do not have internet. And so that negates the ease and comfort of going online and paying your bills. They would have to go to the library. They would have to use an unsecured computer. So that is a drawback for our location. It's not like we're in a huge city. So very few towns actually have e-billing where the real estate bill automatically goes to that town. Tax bills are different for different states. I'm not sure what the background is, but I know Massachusetts has some regulations surrounding this. The city of Lowell is the only city, I believe, that has an e-billing system. And I went to a seminar with her, and it was a very complicated, expensive process for them to do e-billing. So e-billing meant that the person can go on their computer, they can go online and see their real estate bill online. This is something we can certainly look at, we can explore. I don't know if we're large enough, but it's certainly something we can look into and see if it's a possibility. I'm not against modernizing. We're modernizing by doing the online government system. Mercedes Klingerman and Mark Fortier, the fire department, led the charge in this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Your building permits. We're going to have your transfer station permits, so you don't have to buy a transfer station sticker at the transfer station. We're going to have all kinds of things in the next year that are going to roll out that are going to allow you to do your purchasing online so you don't have to go into a public building. That's going to be phased in this spring. So I hope that helps. It probably raises a lot of questions for people, but the town is modernizing. And I'm grateful for Alex writing of the grant for this IT grant that we got. So we're trying to save town money and move into the new future.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gabe. I am outside of the norm. I am going to let Elmer, since it was his request and he has raised his hand. Elmer, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to speak on that. So you should be able to unmute yourself and we can hear you now.
Oh, yes, thank you. I simply wanted to say that I spoke with the people from Unipay, and they said that it's not, you are already in the system. And they told me it's not going to be, you just have to opt in for the e-bills. You're already set up. It's just a matter of you opting in, and it's not going to be much more expensive than what you're already paying. That's what they said. And once you opt in for the e-bill, then you can opt in for the autopay. As far as people who don't want to do that, they don't have to do it. Nobody should be forced to, like you said, a lot of people don't have internet, which
Right.
is really a shame. People should have internet nowadays, but nobody is forcing those people to go and pay e-bills. They can continue paying regular mail. It's just an option that just an option that will bring you into the future.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and we will we'll keep the citizens and yourself included updated on
Thank you.
how we proceed. Enjoy your evening.
You too.
Okay, so next we have signed National Grid distribution easement, and I do believe that Ed, I'm under the impression that Ed is joining us for this, but I don't see.
He is
There he
there.
is. Awesome. Sorry, it's really exciting to see so many people participating, considering we aren't able to stream live via AOTV tonight. To see so many attendees, it's the most that I've actually seen, so it's really exciting, but it's making it hard for me to find everyone's names. So Ed, you should be able to speak now.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
You're a little quiet, but I can hear you pretty clearly.
Okay, so what's happening as part of the upgrade projects, we're getting a new electrical service. We're upgrading the electrical service. And so right now our power comes in off of West Main Street. And there is an actual pole that's in a wetland between West Main Street and our driveway. So it comes across overhead onto that pole and then to a pole that's just outside our gate, and then it goes underground into the plant. And so what they want to do now is come off a pole to another pole that will be right near the end of the driveway that's not in the wetland, and then go underground from there down along the edge of our driveway and then into the plant. So we're going to get a new pole, new transformer. There'll be underground conduit with pull boxes, etc. And so they need a new easement for this new electrical service. So that's what this is for. And the selectmen have to sign this, so.
Okay, questions for Ed? Okay, not seeing any, I would go ahead. Sorry, Jane's got that look like she thinks she's going to say something, but she's not sure what to say. And you're muted.
Trying to figure out if you need a motion.
I'm sorry, you broke up there for me.
Just looking for the motion that we need here.
Oh no, I think mine is frozen, which is really uncomfortable.
So I
It
guess
means
I'll
people
make a
can hear
motion
me, I
that
cannot
we,
hear them.
I'll make a motion that we grant easement as described.
Seconded?
A motion has been made and seconded, and my internet connection is unstable. So if you can't hear me, that's why. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Dennis Schwann's aye.
At Lucier, I.
Tom Smith, aye.
Alec, can you just let Nancy, I feel like she's probably telling us that we're doing something wrong. So could you just let Nancy speak really quick? Go ahead, Nancy.
No, I'm not telling you doing something wrong. I just want to let you know that Pat and Alex still need to sign that easement. It's in my office and I have to leave tomorrow by 11. I have to take my mother to a doctor's appointment. So you would both need to come in and sign that before 11 o'clock so I can get it back to Leanna.
That's perfectly fine.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Ryan, may you aye, so the motion carries. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Have a good evening, okay?
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. So that brings us to our second open time for the public. So I do see that Mike McGee has his hands raised. So Alec, if you could permit him, and just really briefly before you speak, Mike, I just want to remind everyone that you can use the Q&A box throughout any time in the meeting if you have a question and you're just not comfortable speaking, but you're also welcome to raise your hand during open time for the public to speak to the board directly. So Mike, you should be able to speak now.
Well, I had my hand raised since you were involved in your angry tirade against Alec, which I just don't understand. You talked about teamwork. Well, that's the exact opposite of being a leader of a team. You're a disgrace.
Okay.
That's not how someone who leads a team talks to their players, let's say, okay? Were you on any teams at Mahar? Did you have any coaches who talked to you like that? That would be a disgrace. Okay, now both you and Jane said that you distrusted the voters. And yet here you are, you're in your positions because you were elected by the voters. Okay, so you are anti-democratic. You don't believe in democracy. So what I wanted to talk about, okay, the reason I've been sitting here all evening was that I'm opposed to making the town clerk position appointed. I don't want too much power going to a few people like you.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your feedback. I do want to clarify that I don't recall stating that I don't trust the citizens. And if that was how something I stated came across, I would absolutely retract whatever statement it was that gave that implication, because I trust the citizens implicitly.
And of course, the same goes for me. That's not at all what I said or meant to say.
I do see another hand. So Mike, you can put your hand down if you're done speaking. And then Anne's hand is raised. So Alec, if you could permit Anne to speak. And you should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to pile on the chair, but I'm going to have to a little bit here with my opinion. I did send a letter to the selectmen. I guess it wasn't to be read this evening or whatever, but I do oppose changing the position of town clerk to appointed. I think there's so much value in retaining what democracy, what representation we as a community do have left. But also I do want to express my disappointment that I feel that the chair berated one of my representatives, someone who represents many of us very well in our opinion. And I did scrutinize what his statement, what he had put on Facebook. And I guess if you really wanted to lean toward interpreting it in an insulting way, you could, but all I interpret is that he very reasonably would like to discuss why the agenda or how the agenda is set. And it's not unusual for an agenda to be set publicly, and not at all. In fact, it's preferable. But I do want to say that if the chair, whose opinions are absolutely important, if you feel you need to engage in a heated discussion with any member of the committee, I would respectfully ask that you hand the gavel over to the vice chair temporarily. But I just, and I will point out something else here. During election time, during campaign season, the chair did, I think, used his seat as a bully pulpit when he suggested that some of the people running for selectmen were not good choices. And that was, I think that was worse than anything Alexander did or wrote. So I just ask that you please be friends. Please know that you really are a very good team. You're quite a diverse and interesting group. And I just hope to see you thrive together. I'm not trying to pick on you, Mr. Chairman, because you do a fine job. You're a bright person, very bright person. So I just say that with respect. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to be clear, I didn't receive an email from you with any writing for tonight's meeting. So just make sure that you're using the right email for me in the future. I'll always respond if you ask for something to be read. So if you didn't hear back from me, it probably means I didn't get it. So
I don't have one for you. There's no email published for you. Is there?
There should be one on the website, but I can get it. If you said you emailed the rest of the board, I'll get your email and I'll send you one tonight.
I would appreciate that very much. Thank you, Ryan.
Of course. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
So any other citizens wish to speak? You're welcome to raise your hand. I know there was one that was teetering their hand a couple times, so I'll give them a couple seconds. Rhonda, I can't tell if you want to speak because your hand keeps going up and down. So if you want, we're going to unmute you for a second so you can come in and speak if you wish.
I absolutely do want to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been trying to speak all night, actually. I would like a financial analysis on what we gave away tonight as far as cousins and uncles and aunts. What we offer as a package through the Human Resource Board is standard in the industry. And we being one of the poorest communities in town, in the state, I didn't even know what to say when this conversation was going on. I tried to speak, but I was not allowed to speak. And that's part of the problem. You're not letting the citizens participate in our town government. And that needs to stop. I know we're under COVID, and I know we can't be together, but when somebody raises their hands, and I know it's not the time for the open time of the public, but they should be allowed to speak. You know, some of us have been out there for a while and know things. I mean, I watched how Harold explained to Jane about the levy ceiling and the levy limit. And he did not give a answer that anybody else would understand. And more needed to be said about that. And it didn't happen. So Jane, I know you didn't know any more after you asked him than you did before you asked him. Had I been allowed to speak, I would have elaborated on that, but that didn't happen.
I apologize, Rhonda, for that hearing. I did look and ask for hands, and I didn't see your hand at any point during that one. I would have, you know, that hearing, I absolutely would have let you speak. So I apologize. I didn't see it.
And I'm so upset about tonight's meeting. I'm losing my train of thought. But the Nancy thing, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to rephrase that. The town clerk's position agenda item brings up other things to my mind, because we used to elect many positions. We elected the assessors, we elected the treasurer, we elected. And it was under the hands of a former town administrator that those positions went appointed. And I, as a town citizen, never had the opportunity to go to a town meeting or go to an election meeting and vote. So that makes me wonder if all of these positions over the years that were originally elected and now are appointed, is this valid? Because I didn't go to a ballot box and vote. I went to town meeting, but it never went to an annual town election for a vote. I mean, and I believe in democracy, and I don't care what your credentials are. We, the people, should have the right to vote on who we want to represent us. I mean, the town of Orange was, I believe, incorporated on February 24th, 1810. And these elections worked for us for 200 years, and now all of a sudden they don't. I have a problem with that. And Alex, God bless you. Thank you for taking a stand. And Ryan, that was not appropriate in your reaction. And that's all I have to say. And I'll lower my hand. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jane,
I
sorry.
have a question for Rhonda, if that's permissible. Rhonda, oh, she's gone. Rhonda, did the government study group ever look at elected versus appointed for that position?
No, because it had already been done, Jane. When the government study committee was formed, the prior elected positions had already been established as appointed.
Right, but did you ever look at the clerk in that regard?
No, me personally was going back in time. How I felt at that. I felt that it was always wrong to have these positions appointed rather than elected. I want somebody that, has my back, that lives in my town, pays the taxes I pay, and, sees my kids. And, I'm all for that. And while an outsider might be good, I think an insider that lives in my community, knows my community, is better serves my community. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Nancy, I think you had your hand raised. I'm assuming it was in response to Rhonda's questions about voting. So go ahead.
That is correct. Back in 2000, that's when I had just started as town clerk. They had on the warrant to make the position of collector and treasurer both appointed. I believe it passed at that town meeting, but it did not pass at it did not pass at that town meeting. A few years later, they brought it back. It passed at town meeting, but it did not pass at the ballot. The last time that it came up, it was brought up and it was voted as to request the legislature to pass an act allowing those positions to become appointed. Because it was an act of the legislature, there was not a ballot vote. That is another way to go about doing it, which only gives the voters one opportunity to make a decision whether or not they want a position to be appointed or elected. By doing it the way that I've just said this one should happen, it gives the voters two opportunities. They can vote yes or no at town meeting, and then they can vote yes or no at a ballot vote. So it was done legally when those were made appointed. It was done as, like I said, as an act of the legislature.
Okay, thank you very much. So seeing no further hands or no further questions in the comment box, I'm going to move forward with the agenda, which is going to be, so we have approval of minutes for our November 18th, 2020 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, I have, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 11th, 2020 as presented.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Thank you, aye.
Alexander Schwartz, aye.
Lucy, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayu, aye. That motion carries. That brings us to town administrator's report. You're muted, just so you know. Which is appreciated when you're not speaking.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that, folks. I only have one thing that we need to talk about. And we met to go over the auditorium upstairs. We met with the Board of Health, Nancy, and our moderator. And one of the things we wanted to talk to you folks about is, I think a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of meetings ago, you voted that the special town meeting was going to be on January 7th. And at the same time, you voted for an alternate date if we had a snow date. And the vote was for it to be January 14th. One of the things that we discussed was we really can't predict the weather at that time. So we want you to consider revisiting the alternate date. So instead of specifying that the alternate date should be January 14th, that you revote that piece and ask that the alternate date be determined by Chris Woodcock, our moderator, and the town clerk, so that they can plan for weather, because by giving a set alternate date, that doesn't allow them the flexibility. And so the two of them are asking us to rescind the alternate date of January 14th and allow them to determine what the alternate date would be because of snow and weather and that kind of thing.
That's perfectly fine with me. I have no objection to that. I do think it makes logical sense as well.
So I could ask Ryan to just put it on the agenda next meeting, and you guys could vote it then.
I mean, I think we could probably just vote it now to change the alternate date to a date to be determined by the town clerk and town moderator in collaboration with each other.
Okay.
And that is my motion. I make a motion that we revise the alternate date for town meeting to be determined by the town moderator and who else?
Town clerk.
Town clerk.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwantz, aye.
Here, I,
Tom Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayu, aye. That motion carries.
Thank
Board
you.
of Selectmen's report. So as usual, I'll go left to right, which actually puts Jane at number 1 tonight.
Oh, thank you. Couple small things. One thing I noticed when we did the tax recap work, we have a vacant assessor position. We used to announce all the vacancies all the time, and we haven't been doing that lately, but I want to note that we are down one assessor, which is a vacant position. Very interesting work appointed, and if anyone out there is paying attention, you should let Gabe or the chairman know that you're interested, and I think we would be interested in speaking with you about that. So that's one thing. I also, following up on the comment a little bit ago that so many people in town don't have internet. I know that we have a cable advisory committee. I am always appalled when I get my cable bill because it is just so darned expensive, and it goes up by $20 for no reason, and nobody even says anything, and we feel like we're completely out of control about it. I was approached by someone who said, why don't we try to get broadband available in town here? Some of our neighboring communities have done exactly that, and I know it involved some capital investment and some state funding and a whole lot of angst, but I just want to suggest that if anybody knows anything about that and has any interest in maybe finding an alternate way to get internet service available in town for people who can't afford the cable service. I don't know. I just want to put that out there. I don't really know much about it, but it seemed like a really interesting idea to me. And the other thing that I wanted to just sort of put out there as an idea is that I know that Alex and Dave Wellink are looking at restructuring the sewer commissioner structure, because we realize that there's value in having a dedicated group of people who focus on one of our utilities. And I just want to sort of raise the specter again of DPW. I wonder if it's time to look at that again, because even while we acknowledge that the wastewater treatment plant, we saw what happened when the bid just went completely out of control, and I still have a lot of questions about how and why that happened. But it's clear that we don't have the internal capacity among us as sewer commissioners to do that job. But we also, at the same time, we have so many other construction projects going on. We've got 3 bridge projects that poor Colin is trying to oversee, even while he tries to do the roads and tries to keep the snow down and tries to keep the lighting on in the park in town. And there seems to me to be a great need for additional project management capacity or oversight, because it's sometimes scary to realize how close we come to losing grant funding or losing Mass DOT support because we haven't been able to meet the timetables. So I just to you, Alex, and if Dave Welling, when you guys talk about it, I wonder if you might consider whether we should broaden our vision to talk about an even greater capacity than just the sewer commission. So I don't need an answer. I'm just kind of throwing it out there, and that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you very much, Jane. Pat.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Alex? I think you might be muted yet.
I think that's a great suggestion, Jane. I'll follow up with David and see. I haven't thought about that. I have to give some thought, and we'll see where it goes. And I'll look forward for any ideas that you may have. The other thing I wanted to say, I just want to express my disappointment with tonight's meeting. I think I'm the sort of person that believes that you should do the right thing, even if you stand alone. The position that I took today was one that, well, when I was elected, I wasn't elected in a vacuum. I came with my values. I came with my commitments to the citizens. And I think maintaining not just the democratic process, but the town's character, the sort of the community that we have. That was a big commitment of mine. And I was very disappointed that, some sought to, create a big conspiracy as if I, am here to destroy the town from within. I absolutely wants the best for this town. I have a disagreement. I think, changing that position will be a net negative to this town, and I think I have a healthy majority of the citizens in my side. Well, I just want to also thank the chairman for spending so much time looking at my conversation with citizens, because I don't apologize for engaging citizens and for making sure that their ideas are represented by me here. So I remind that I represent the same citizens as you, Ryan, and I believe they, if someone disagrees with you, I think their idea deserves to be heard. So that's all I have to say.
Tom?
I have 3 things I want to touch on tonight. The first is Chief James Young from the fire department would like to remind citizens to please be mindful of safe practices when it comes to heating their homes in colder weather. Please have heating appliances cleaned and serviced by professional. Unfortunately, the leading cause to fires in Franklin County is often heating sources. If citizens have any questions, please refer to the Orange Fire Facebook page or the Mass Department of Fire Services. Police Chief James Sullivan would like to share that the police department has received a $12,000 grant. This money will be used to add enforcement efforts to make roadways safer. The money will be spread out for 5 campaigns over the next year, so that's great news. And I wanted to take a minute to thank Timmy Matthews, Jason Rushford, Colin Calais, and the Highway Department for their countless volunteer time for making the holiday skyline, which runs from the boathouse to the fire station, possible. They volunteered their time last Saturday along with other residents for making that possible. It was a lot of work. People have no idea that has to be pulled over physically by a cable in the water, and it would not be possible for a lot of people. The other thing I wanted, as many people have noticed, the lampposts are 99.5% done. So we have decorated 27 lampposts. Voting has begun. You can go to the Town of Orange website and vote on your favorite lamppost, and the winner will be announced approximately December 31st. And thank you for all of the local businesses who sponsored the lamppost for stepping up and doing this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. A couple updates. So I did give my plug earlier about AOTV and the AOTV auction this year. Like many organizations, there's been real struggle with fundraising this year, and I would encourage everyone to watch the auction and bid and help support the program that keeps us coming to you inside your homes and on the radio and on your computer at home. I also just wanted to share, recently in the paper there was a reported article on a possible, like, quote unquote mass eviction at one of our local affordable housing complexes in town. I am a member of the rent control board in town. For those that don't know it exists, it does comprise of 3 members. So it is something that was brought to our attention, and we are looking into it to ensure that everyone has access to, sorry, Gabe said she'd be right back and it threw me off, has access to affordable housing in safe conditions, especially in the middle of a pandemic, housing crisis and winter. So at the same time, I know that tonight's discussion veered in a direction that's slightly different than we typically see at our meeting. I know when you're working as a board, you're going to bring different opinions and personalities into it. And at the end of the day, regardless of how we differ as far as our thoughts and stances go on topics, I know that we will continue to work together as a team. Each one of us was elected, in my opinion, with the sole purpose of representing the citizenry and working together to accomplish those goals and tasks. And I know that from tonight forward, like we have in the past every night, we will continue to represent our citizens as a whole. And that is what you'll see at our meetings. We do have need for 3 executive sessions tonight. We'll be entering them, Jane's face just lit up like the 4th of July. We'll be entering them back to back. We will not return to public session this evening. So I'm gonna list off all 3 now. We have reason number 1, which is to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff, or individual. The second executive session we'll enter will be reason number 2, which is to conduct. So for the first one, that is indeed that second half to discuss complaints brought against one of the municipal employees. Reason number 2 that we will enter will be to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. This session is in regards to that. And the last reason number 3 we'll enter is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the borrowing or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. I do declare that that would have a detrimental effect, and this will actually be a joint executive session with the Board of Health. This is an opportunity for us to get a refresh, if you will, on the point properties and properties over on the lake there. So we will also then, lastly, before we adjourn executive session, we will approve an executive session set of minutes for October 14th, 2020, which will be available to the public as long as the information can be properly redacted. If it cannot be, based on open meeting law, then they will remain sealed. Again, we will not enter public session after. I would entertain a motion to exit public session and enter executive session reason number 1 with plans to enter reason number 2 and reason number 3 immediately following.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Jane Pierce, aye.
Alexander Schwartz, aye.
Lucier, aye.
Tom Smith, aye.
Ryan Mayhew, aye. So thank you, everyone, and good night. We will see you very soon. So the board, we're going to exit this meeting completely, and then there should be, if you haven't received it yet,